How does a 200-foot steel fortress carrying 42 living, breathing souls simply cease to exist? It's a question that has haunted maritime investigators for over 3 decades. Imagine it, a clear night, a calm river, and a crew looking forward to a hot meal at the next port. Then, total silence. In the heart of the Amazon, the world's most powerful river system, the water doesn't just flow, it breathes. It hides, and sometimes it takes. On a moonlit night in 1994, the MS Araruna sent its final routine signal. 6 minutes later, when the Port Authority tried to ping their location, there was nothing. No wreckage, no oil slick, no bodies. Just the silent black water reflecting the stars like a cold glass mirror. Tonight, we're diving into the Amazon's Bermuda Triangle to uncover the chilling truth behind the ship that disappeared. This isn't just a missing vessel, it's a doorway into something much darker. The MS Araruna was no rickety riverboat. It was an industrial-grade cargo ship equipped with the best navigation tech 1994 had to offer. At 11:42 p.m., Captain Silva checked in. He sounded bored. He mentioned the weather was perfect, but he noted one weird thing. The jungle had gone silent. No macaws, no howler monkeys, no insects. Just a heavy silence that seemed to press against the hull. By 11:48 p.m., the ship was gone. Not sunk, gone. In a standard sinking, a ship of this size would take at least 20 to 30 minutes to submerge. There would be air trapped in the hull, causing explosions, debris floating to the surface, and emergency beacons triggered by water pressure. None of that happened. Search and rescue teams arrived at the coordinates within 40 minutes. They found the river perfectly still. Using high-powered searchlights, they scanned every inch of the banks. There were no broken branches, no disturbed silt, and most terrifyingly, no survivors screaming for help in the dark. It was as if the Araruna had been plucked from the water by a giant hand. The locals call this stretch of the river the Devil's Throat. They believe the river is home to the Boitata, a giant serpent of fire that lives under the water. While scientists laugh at legends, the testimony of a fisherman named Mateo makes those legends feel chillingly real. 3 days after the disappearance, Mateo was laying nets near the site. He reported a sudden violent churning in the water. It wasn't a whirlpool, it was a welling up. The water began to steam, turning a milky white. Mateo reached his hand out and pulled it back instantly. The water was near boiling. Through the thick steam, he claimed to see the mast of a ship. It wasn't lying flat, it was standing perfectly vertical, rising out of the depths like a ghost. But as soon as it appeared, a massive thumping sound shook his canoe, and the mast was sucked back down into the blackness. Could there be a localized volcanic vent under the Amazon? Geologically, the region is stable. There should be no heat. Some investigators believe Mateo saw a limnic eruption, a rare phenomenon where dissolved carbon dioxide suddenly erupts from lake water. But that wouldn't explain the mast. It wouldn't explain why the water felt like it was alive. Fast forward to 2002, a private salvage team from Florida, armed with million-dollar side-scan sonar, decided to solve the mystery once and for all. They spent weeks mapping the riverbed. Finally, they hit the jackpot. At a depth of 150 feet, tucked into a massive underwater cavern, they found a metallic signature. The length, the width, the cargo hold. It was the Araruna. The team was ecstatic. They prepared their remotely operated vehicle, ROV, for the descent. As the ROV approached the coordinates, the video feed began to flicker. The sonar operator, a man named Henderson, turned pale. He told the divers that on his screen, the ship was moving, not drifting with the current, but pulsing. When the ROV reached the exact spot, the cameras showed nothing, just a flat, sandy floor. But Henderson was screaming at his monitor, "It's right there! You're standing on the deck!" Then came the audio. The ROV's external microphones picked up a sound that still haunts the team, a rhythmic, metallic banging. Clang, clang, clang. It was the sound of someone inside a steel room hitting the wall with a hammer, desperate to be let out. In 2018, the Brazilian Air Force received an automated emergency ping. The digital signature was unmistakable. It belonged to the MS Araruna's emergency position indicating radio beacon. The signal wasn't coming from the river. It was coming from the zone of silence, a dense, impenetrable patch of jungle 50 miles inland. There are no roads there, no rivers, no way to get a ship there without a fleet of heavy-lift helicopters. A helicopter was dispatched to the GPS coordinates. They expected to find a wreckage, or perhaps a thief who had found the beacon. Instead, they found a solid, unbroken canopy of trees that were hundreds of years old. The trees were so dense that not even a fallen branch could reach the ground. Yet the signal was pulsing from directly beneath them. For 4 hours, the beacon screamed its location into the satellite network, and then, as if a switch had been flipped, it vanished. Some theorists suggest the Amazon sits on a thin spot in our reality. They argue the Araruna didn't sink, it transitioned. If the ship is now fused with the jungle in another dimension, it explains why we find signals but no steel. It explains why the jungle went silent before the disappearance. The predators knew something was coming through the veil. 6 months after the ship vanished, a local tribe found a high-end leather suitcase snagged on some roots. Inside, the clothes were dry, not damp, not molded, dry. The suitcase belonged to Julian Vane. According to the official manifest, Julian Vane didn't exist. He wasn't on the crew list. He wasn't a registered passenger. Inside the bag were several hand-drawn maps. These weren't maps of the Amazon we know. They showed the river flowing in impossible loops, Escher-like geometry where the water seemed to flow uphill. At the bottom of the suitcase was a diary. The last entry was dated November 14, 1994, the night the ship disappeared. It read, "The captain thinks we are moving forward. He doesn't see the stars changing. The water is no longer water. It is a throat, and we are the meal." To this day, the families of the missing crew members report a terrifying phenomenon. Every November 14th, their phones ring. When they answer, there is no voice, just the sound of heavy rushing water and the distant faint sound of a ship's horn, sounding long and mournful from somewhere very, very far away. So, where is the MS Araruna? Is it resting in an undiscovered trench crushed by the weight of the Amazon? Or is it still sailing through that other river, the one Julian Vane drew in his diary? We like to think we've mapped the world. We like to think that with our satellites and our sonar, there are no more monsters in the dark. But the Araruna reminds us that there are still places on this earth where the laws of man and physics simply don't apply. The Amazon is an ancient, hungry god, and once it decides to keep a secret, it never lets it go. What do you think? Was the Araruna a victim of a rare natural event, or did it stumble into a place it was never meant to go? Drop your theories in the comments. We read every single one, especially the ones that keep us up at night. Until next time, keep your eyes on the water.